Chapter 11. Miguel. 1:10 a.m. I arrived at the doorstep and stopped the car. She went out as she was, naked, walking slowly towards the door with her shoes dangling in her left hand and her dress on her forearm. I hurried to run ahead of her to open the door. We entered.
"I'm going to take a shower,"
she announced. I poured myself a whiskey and sat down. My lips still burned. Just a simple kiss, a light touch, but a sublime sensation, yet so devoid of desire, tenderness only. I sank into the sofa and tried not to think about anything, absolutely nothing, for me, today. It was enough. I didn't want to know more about gods, demigods, angels, and demons of darkness. I took refuge, as I always do, in the smoke of a cigarette, seeking liberation. She came out of the shower drying her hair with a towel, came to the sofa in front of me, sat down, and looked at me. Glorious creature. I looked at her without being able to understand why. I didn't desire her for myself. She was perfect in every way, and like everything that is perfect, she seemed unattainable to me.
"Miguel, what about you?"
Me? What about me?
"And you, Miguel. I've been talking to you about me, my memories, my life. And yours, Miguel."
I don't have anything that interesting to tell, but I suspect you know that. I just keep writing and taking one day at a time.
"Why?"
Why? Well, because I don't have reasons to want much more. I just want my peace and quiet. I increasingly detest disturbances.
"Miguel, Miguel. Who hurt you so much?"
She saw right through me and I wasn't feeling the slightest bit comfortable about it. She looked at me with a somewhat enigmatic smile, with a fixed gaze that I couldn't even meet. Her eyes seemed to look directly into my soul, gassing my feelings.
"Who was she, Miguel?"
I felt perfectly cornered by this question. She was someone who is somewhere, in the past and who no longer matters.
"She does matter. The past has the virtue of haunting every little thing we do. In the end, it's through it that we deal with the present, and that has repercussions on the future."
She was right and I knew it. I got up and, trying to avoid the conversation, went to the terrace and lit a cigarette. Although I was facing away from her, I could almost feel her gaze burning into my skin. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to unearth the past, however. I was sure she wouldn't give up until I did. The mere fact that she brought out these memories in me that I stubbornly kept dormant had an impact on me. I felt bad. I felt like retreating into a shell. Inside, she waited. She knew I would go back in. And I knew it, but my urge was to go down to the beach and just stay there. The cigarette ended and so did the whiskey. I wanted more. I wanted to drink until the alcohol-induced stupor made me forget again. I entered, went to the bottle to pour myself another. As I was tapping the bottle, her hand grabbed mine with a gentle firmness, and I felt prevented from doing so. I broke down.
"Miguel, how can you write about life and yet run away from it?"
I looked at her. "You know, I think it's to escape it that I write. I take refuge in lives that are not mine and in universes I create without feeling crushed by reality."
"But reality doesn't disappear."
"No, but it gets hidden."
"Do you want to tell me what happened?"
"No."
"But you will tell."
The authoritative tone she gave to the last sentence became an almost irresistible command. I didn't want to talk, but the memories flooded in, and the pain was too strong. I felt the same pressure in my chest that I felt that day, the day I wished I could erase from my existence. I struggled to hold back the tears that came to my eyes. I sat down, lit another cigarette. She sat in front of me. I met her 10 years ago. I found myself saying, "Her name is Diana." She was and is a beautiful, sophisticated woman. I met her at a friend's gathering. She was intelligent, cultured, someone pleasant to talk to.
"Tell me."
She continued to look at me in an expectant silence. I continued. At the time, I had just published my first book and wrote sporadically for newspapers and magazines. My book was a success. I made some money from it. Not as much as many think, but some. And I was already enjoying popularity in certain circles. Invitations to parties and events started coming in. Book launches for other authors. I enjoyed this change in my life. This recognition of what I had done. I began to attend gatherings, where we talked for hours about arts in general, where I learned to appreciate many things that had escaped me until then, and where I met many interesting people, and one day, I met her. We were a considerable group, and we were gathered in a bar near Roma Cinema, where there used to be live jazz shows. The atmosphere was select and calm, and we used to talk for hours before the shows started. I remember perfectly, when I saw her for the first time, she came to accompany someone. I don't remember who, and she caught my attention. I tried not to stare, not to look too much at her, but I paid attention to her movements, to what she said, to the way she said it. At the end of the night, she came up to me, to my surprise. She had a copy of my book and asked me to sign it. It was a good excuse to start a conversation with her, if only I had known.
No one knows. That's why life is interesting.
We crossed paths randomly, here and there, until one day, we met in a bookstore by chance. We ended up having a coffee and chatting. We exchanged phone numbers. It didn't take long for us to start going out together. We got to know each other slowly. Without rush, one thing led to another and we ended up getting married and starting a family. She continued to have an independent attitude that I liked. But, quiet as I always was, I had to get used to some things I didn't appreciate. She insisted on going to all the jet-set parties we were invited to, much to my dismay, as I usually declined those invitations, and she always wanted some glamour. I ended up buying this house that was in ruins and remodeling it because our house was always filled with people and it started to become impossible for me to write. I withdrew here and left her with what she liked. Our life seemed to be going well. I wanted to have children. But she didn't want to, not yet, she said. And this went on until one day.
One day.
A friend warned me that I should open my eyes, but didn't tell me about what. However, I was awake and alert. My house in Lisbon continued to be a whirlwind of people. She went to parties alone or with someone. She was rarely seen alone anywhere. I, on the other hand, to be able to write, spent a lot of time away from Lisbon. I began to feel something dark gnawing at me inside, obscure thoughts. I wanted certainties. I hired a detective to follow her because I wanted certainties. And one day, that day, the certainties came in a yellow A4 envelope. She didn't have one lover. She had several, and on a small cassette was recorded all the contempt and disrespect she felt for me. I immediately went to Lisbon. I entered the house in the middle of the afternoon to find her in bed with one of her lovers. I just walked into the room. I sat down. The man who was with her turned pale, without reaction. "Get up, grab your things, and leave," I just said to him. He didn't even look back. She looked at me and cried, "Love, I'm sorry. It was a one-time thing. It's not what it seems." Lies, so many lies. I threw the envelope onto the bed. She opened it, and her eyes filled with terror. "Love, this isn't true. You know I love you. I would never do this. This is all fabricated." And I started playing some recordings of some of her phone calls. "Isn't this your voice? Love, we can fix this." I shook my head. I headed for the bedroom door. Before leaving, I remember hearing myself say, "Since nothing here was paid for by you, with your money, everything stays. Get dressed. You have 10 minutes to leave the house. In 10 minutes, I'll put you out on the street as you are." But where do I go? You can go to one of your lovers. Or you can stay on the street, if you want. That's where whores usually are, right? Hurry up, you have 10 minutes. 10 minutes later she was leaving. An hour later the lock was changed. I finally fell silent. I felt sore from the memories. I had loved her so much. I could have understood so much. I could have even understood the lovers she had due to my absences. I didn't understand the contempt in her voice. And for the first time, I realized that, despite spending all these years blaming her, the truth is that I felt guilty for what happened. And finally, I cried. Lilith got up, came to me, sat down beside me, hugged me, made me lie down on her lap. I curled up, sheltered myself, experienced that sweet sensation of when I was a child and ran to my mother's lap. I finally felt comforted, as if something inside me was finally ready to rest. She stroked my hair, leaned down, gave me another small kiss on the lips, and said,
"All right, my dear. You can start living again."